Hello and welcome back to another guide for Hard West 2. My name is Saiken and today we're diving into the beginner's guide for Hard West 2. Obviously these are spoilers, so if you don't like spoilers then this guide is not the right thing for you. I will do a condensed, no BS, no repetition guide about everything you need to know when building your POS, go through a couple of the characters as well as cards and equipment. So a little bit of everything, and I'm trying to do that in 10 minutes. Let's dive into it. So let's start with the team composition of your POS. The POS is basically made out of 6 characters: Jin Carter, Flynn and Laughing Deer as the standard 3 that you're getting, and later you're unlocking first Old Man Bill, then Klalish, and later Lazarus, pretty much at the beginning of the game. So those would be the 6 characters that you can play with, and with the exception of one mission, that's what you can choose from. To go through the characters real quick, Flynn is a character that has Shadow Barrage. It's a pistolero, so pistol based and rifle based assassin, I would call him. Very good character for having bravado chains, which in this game are the way of resetting your action points by killing enemies and then basically continuing to kill. So he can be quote unquote the carry of your team. You do have Flynn with a special ability Shadow Swap, which will allow you to swap your place with that of an enemy or another post member. Very essential character to do battlefield manipulation, typically a setup character. You do have Laughing Deer, which is the second carry character, does have a melee only setup where he is incredibly strong. Melee weapons, however, only require 1 action point to attack, so if you plan it correctly, Laughing Deer will be able to kill many characters in chain. Old Man Bill is another pistolero, much slower than Jin as the counterpart, and comes with Deadman's Revenge, which is a perfect setup skill. Wants to get into the middle of everyone, wants to have a little bit lower hit points, and the lower the hit points, the more damage the Deadman's Revenge deals to everything. That's a perfect way of setting up all of the enemies for further encounters. Klalish is what I would call a crowd control character with the Deceptive Spirit ability. Does come as a standard with a rifle setup and a melee setup, which is a bit of a weird combination. Typically you will play her as a more ranged character, and Deceptive Spirit is basically a mimic beacon that you can also control. So with that, she will avoid damage by basically putting her spirit out. And finally, Lazarus is the only quote-unquote healer, but don't mistake that. He is also a shotgunner, so he can deal quite a bit of damage. His ability is Transfusion, which allows you to basically change your hit points with that of a target. At the beginning, other possum members, later all of the characters. That allows you to basically heal low hit point characters by giving them Lazarus hit points and then basically exchanging Lazarus, then low hit points with that of an enemy, equally dealing quote unquote damage by shifting the low hit points away from your POS towards the enemies. Very strong combination. What would I recommend as a combination? I would say you should think about at least 1 to 2 characters that are benefiting from bravado. From my experience of playing the game, Jin Carter and Laughing Deer by far do that the best, mainly because both of them do have good bravado skills. Jin Carter has a skill that increases all of the damage of his weapons whilst bravado is going, and on top of that he has pistolero and gunslinger and rifleman, so he has all of the weapon categories that he needs in order to get even more damage, meaning he's the single highest damage character with ranged weapons. On the other hand, Laughing Deer, with only 1 AP melee attacks as well as a passive ability whenever he kills someone, allowing him to stack up crit chance when later in the game when he kills someone. I think it is there we go, Natural Predator. Whenever you kill someone you gain a stacking 1% bullseye chance. That's passive and it lasts until the end of the mission. With around 45 to 50 enemies in the end missions, this means he can get a whooping 50% passive crit multiplier, and that will make his attacks incredibly strong. So both of these characters I would put in any time of the week. Flynn is kind of the one character that should be in every single post because of her teleportation abilities, and then I personally fill it up with any of the other characters, but you can also use multiple of them and basically build your posse around them. All of them are serviceable, it just changes the playstyle a little bit. Moving on to weapons. Weapons fall into 4 categories. 1, melee weapons, 1 action point to use, only melee Number 2, pistols, which typically have 2 action points to use, typically have trick shot, meaning they can bounce off bullets, and typically have moderate range. There are exceptions like the Derringer, which only requires 1 action point to use. Third category, shotguns. Shotguns do have AoE damage, they do have a certain spread and the range. You need to look at the range. The longer the range, the smaller the spread. Later level shotguns also do have rider effects like the Scorcher here, which has burning as an effect. And then finally we got rifles. Rifles always, with the exception of 1 rifle, cost 3 action points to use, typically have incredibly high damage, most noticeably the elephant gun with the highest single target damage in the entire game. And they typically also are used in order to shoot them with higher elevation. Some of them even have an extra elevation bonus like the Breacher's Carabine. So what are the best weapons and how to use them? Pretty simple. Later weapons, in my perspective, typically tend to outperform previous weapons. There are straight upgrades between certain weapons. The beginning, Cold, for instance, is 4 damage. Then later you get the Widowmaker with 5 damage, and then later you get Desert Ranger and a Bullet Bouncer with 6 damage. So it's obvious that these handguns are better, but in my perspective, the weapons that have the most extra buffs that they bring to the table are typically coming at the premium. Best handgun in my book would be the Bullet Bouncer, with the ability to get a chance to hit every time a shot is bouncing. The best shotgun in my perspective is the Scorcher later in the game, with an incredibly high range and burning on top of it, plus a 15% extra chance for crit. The best rifle in my perspective is the Hellfire rifle. Has a trick shot, has the burning ability, and with 10 damage and no cooldown, it is a fantastic weapon. The best melee weapon is kind of tied between Cross of Thorns for damage. It is one of 2 melee weapons that has 4 base damage and it deals burning on top of it. And the other number 1 or best weapon would be the Gunstock Club, mainly due to the daze effect, which disallows enemies to use guns. So you can have high hit point targets that are basically dazed and are oftentimes helpless once you continue to chain daze them. Moving on to equipment. So equipment comes in 2 different forms. We do have consumables and we do have trinkets. Let's do the trinkets real quick because they are simple trinkets. Every character has 1 slot and can put a trinket in. They do have passive effects, and the effects are different in quality. I would say there is a line of trinkets that helps with healing, 3 of them to be precise. The Arcane's Book that allows you to kill an enemy and gain 2 hit points by killing it. The smaller version of that, Talisman of the Witch, 1 hit point after every kill. And then the Wendigo's Skull, which gives you a 50% chance if your character has low hit points to basically heal up and trigger Bloodlust. All those trinkets do have a value on characters that regularly take damage, such as Laughing Deer, and can fully subsidize any form of individual healing that the character is taken. So particularly Arcane's Book is very good in that. Second category of trinkets that I would put are speed trinkets. There are 3 trinkets, 2 of them that you can find during the game and 1 in the last mission. Tobacco Pouch is potentially the most potent one that gives you 4 speed. The other one is the Snakeskin's Boot with 2 speed. Later in the last mission before the train, you will get one trinket that gives you 4 speed, luck, and hit points. That obviously is quote-unquote the best trinket in the game. Speed is just such a dominant stat in the game, and everything that can give you speed should be taken into consideration. All of the other trinkets fall into the somewhat okay category. We do have hit point and luck trinkets. We do have a trinket that gives status immunities to Dazed and Drunk and hit points. And we do have a couple of melee crit improvement trinkets, luck gaining trinkets, and only handgun damage improvement trinkets. All of them are fine, but nothing to write home about. I would stick with hit point healing on your main carry, and then use speed on whoever needs it, and hit points on whoever needs it as well. Just basic passive bonuses that will make the game easier and more accessible for you. Coming to consumables, consumables fall into 2 categories. One, true consumables, which you would see at, for instance, the nail bomb. They are one-time usable items, and then afterwards they're gone. And then there are reusable consumables, which means you can use them once per mission, but then you can reuse them in the next mission. So to rank the consumables from strongest to weakest, by far the strongest consumable is dynamite. There is not even a close competition to it. It is so strong that in the end I was double dynamiting on 2 characters and 1 dynamite on both of the other characters, simply because the strongest one, blue dynamite, does deal 8 points of damage in a huge radius, and on top of that only costs 1 action point. The normal dynamite does 6 points of damage, but don't get deterred by it. Whenever you see dynamite, you can blank out by it. It is the best consumable item in the game by a long stretch. The reason why that is because on the higher difficulties you will need to set up a lot of the enemies, and the hit point pools are so high that in order to just trigger bravado chains you will need to dish out damage. Also, 1 action point for AoE that much damage is just absolutely amazing. The dynamite consumables are closely followed by reusable healing consumables. Shout out here to the Doctor's Bag with strong healing, a couple of curing of status effects and reusability, as well as smelling salts, which is the smaller version of it. There are a couple of usable consumables like bandages in particular, which will remove broken bones, which is a status effect that does not allow you to move anymore. So that can be a lifesaver in the early parts of the game. And all of the other stuff is mainly just healing. There are a couple of consumables that will give you status effects, but frankly speaking, most time it's not worth the 1 action point. Most noticeable, I love the gold nugget as a reusable 50 luck trinket, but the reality is that the game is so fast paced on the higher difficulties where you continuously need to push forward that extra luck that you can give yourself once in a while doesn't really come in that handy. It will make 1 shot hit, yes, but for that you would effectively need to sacrifice an action point in between combats when you otherwise could be moving, and moving is what you should be doing in order to keep up with the timers. So that's the sweet and short of all of the consumables. Moving on to cards. Alright, that brings us nicely to the last part of this beginner series, the cards. So for starters, you do have a kind of spec down poker deck, 9 to ace, and then 2 jokers that can be found in chapter 2 and chapter 3. Check out my other guide if you want to know where exactly. And essentially the question is, the better type of poker hand that you're going to go down, the more traits will be unlocked for your character. So let's talk a little bit about what the trade-off is. Of course, initially you want to go as deep as you can, so 5 of a kind is the way to go. That's the optimal part if you can manage to find both of the jokers. That automatically then locks you into 4 of a kind for both of the others, because simply you can't have royal flush and then 5 of a kind as well. I suppose you could with the 9s and then still have royal flush, but you can't have 2 5 of a kinds and then still royal flush. That's impossible. So then for those who played the first time and don't have the jokers available. The other question is, do you want to go into royal flush, meaning the 10 jack, queen, king and ace of a respective color, or are you going to go with 4 of a kind? And I've gone through all of the 6 characters and pretty in depth looked at the abilities that you're getting for the last 2 bits, because if you're doing 4 of a kind, then you get all of the abilities all the way up to the last 2. And with the exception maybe of Jin, none of the abilities down here, the last 2, are really worth needing to spec into. And the reason why I'm saying this is the biggest problem of the royal flushes in this game is that you're going to lock a character into a single trait. All of the cards here do have a trait on them or a passive bonus, whilst the diamonds will have max luck, the clubs will have speed, the hearts will have maximum hit points, and the spades will have bullseye chance. In terms of usefulness, the clubs tower heads and shoulders above everything else. Speed is so important in this game. It is better than anything else. I personally would rank with a pretty big distance bullseye's chance as the second most important, because extra weapon damage and a couple of triggers around it can be actually quite nice and will allow you to go through hit point pools much faster than max hit points and then max luck, simply because there are enough ways of hitting enemies even without requiring luck. So bottom line is, if you would be going right into only say 1 of a kind per character, then you would end up with one character being ultra fast and therefore even being too fast for what is needed, because he would be outrunning all of the other POS members, and you would have all 3 other characters solely relying on trinkets. And the only trinket that realistically can do that is the +4 speed trinket that could give you this one here, the tobacco pouch, that could give you somewhat enough speed to even get above 20. Since for the carries I would value 25 speed to be the sweet spot, I can only suggest to you get rid of the idea of having the royal flush and instead go with 4 of a kind. It is simply statistically better, and it will allow your characters to be more even spread. And it also opens up the 5 of a kind, which arguably or pretty obviously is the best there is. I hope you enjoyed the beginner's guide. If you did, leave a comment and a like down below, and see you all in one of my further guides. Bye bye.